Welcome. You've splash landed into this Prosecco-laden podcast, straight into the woo-woo pool with the crew of Ohm-g. We're just a simple group of tragically imperfect and highly empathic BFFs, exploring a wide range of atypical topics with humor, grace, and curiosity. This is Ohm-g.
Hi everybody, it's Alexandra from Ohm-g, the podcast. Tonight we're going to talk about intuition and intuition development. So you're going to hear from each of us what was the catalyst moment that started off to, hey, we might know a little something more or be a little something more. And what our practice was in the beginning to continue to grow and foster that, and then where we are now and what works for us, what doesn't, collectively what we do as a whole to develop, and, individual quirks and practices. So let's kick it off.
All right. And I'm interested because this is a conversation that I don't know that we've had with each other before, like with Allie, who's here with us tonight. Luckily, we get to have Allie with us tonight.
Yay, Allie!
She's home from school for a while, so we're glad she's with us. But I don't know that I know her, entrance story and how she started with development. So I'm really excited about having this conversation with everybody.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun,
right?
Yep.
I'm just gonna dive right in there into that pool of spirit.
Well, I know this is Chandra, and for me, it was one of those things that growing up, I would have these thoughts. And I would just kind of know things. I remember one time in particular, we were at it was like a youth group kind of thing. It was kind of like a pseudo prom kind of thing. We all kind of got dressed up and went out to dinner with the group. And of course, this was like back in the church days. So it was like the church youth group. And
some shit goes down there.
Yes. Little Peyton Place at the Town and Country restaurant. But anyway. As we were sitting there and talking before the food came, someone asked, "Where's so and so?" And the conversation went around like, "Oh, they were going to come, but they didn't show up." And I heard like a voice in my head that says, "But they'll be here later." And at the moment, I kind of was like, "Where did that come from?" But okay. And it just so happened I was going home with a friend of mine to spend the night, and as she and I walked out of the restaurant to get in her car, this person was there in the parking lot in their car, kind of backed up beside her car, waiting for us. And I remembered in my mind, I was like, "Oh yeah, they are here later."
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of not in the moment that it kind of freaked me out a little bit, but like in retrospect, I started looking back, how did I know that person was going to, be there? And
that was your intuition and spirit talking to you.
Right. It definitely was. And, as time progressed and I started digging into like what is intuition a little bit more, and I learned that I was the channeler or the claircognizant type that comes with it's called clear knowing. So sometimes I'll just feel it in my body, or I'll just like have a thought and know that it is truth. I've even had experiences where like I would have dreams. I know this one time I was dreaming about an ex-boyfriend's family, like their mother and father, and I dreamed that I was chasing him and finally like got him pinned against a wall and asked him, what is wrong? What is going on? Why, he was crying and screaming, and I was like, what is going on? And he's like, they're gone. I can't find them. They're gone. I don't know where they are. And I knew he was talking about his parents in the dream, and it kind of scared me. And I had stayed in contact with his mother. So I didn't know her phone number, but I knew where she worked, and she worked for a community college. And so I called like the main number of the college, and I'm like, I'm just going to push buttons until I get to an operator when I can ask to speak to her. And so it was like, if you would like to speak with so-and-so, press 1. If you'd like to speak with so-and-so, press 2. And I was just like, okay, 3, 4. And I just kept pressing numbers. And when I pressed the last number, it said, "You are being connected to her name."
Wow.
I kid you not. It went to her voicemail. So I left a message and just said, "I just had a crazy dream last night. I just wanted to make sure that you were okay. So-and-so." Well, come to find out, she and her husband had been going on vacation. They were driving up north to see their family. They were supposed to get there by 10 p.m. and they were supposed to call my friend and tell them they made it. Well, they ended up having a flat tire and blah, 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 and they couldn't get it fixed. And it was like 3 a.m. which by the way is the time I had the dream.
Oh, weird.
Wow. And he was like freaking out because he couldn't, and this was before cell phones, so he couldn't get in touch with them. He couldn't, didn't know where they were, of course was thinking the worst. So situations like that where I just knew something was wrong, like it was more than a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take inspired action to try to figure it out, and come to find out there was something going on. So those are like the kind of experiences that I've had along the way that kind of led me to decide that I need to investigate this a little further and kind of figure out what these quote unquote knowings are all about.
And totally tangent to your story, but if you're ever trying to deal with the frustration of a directory on a phone, if you keep hitting the pound button enough times, it'll actually just automatically connect you to an operator.
Random facts.
So just,
random
facts.
If you ever needed. Unfortunately, I don't think that's a direct connection to spirit, but that would be cool. Just, hey, keep going. Pound. I really need some help, some guidance.
So that's a cool story.
Yeah, interesting.
And then, so that happened to you when you were younger. And then when did you pick up the, wanting to understand more about that?
Well, it was actually, we had just had a death in the family, and I was, I was very distraught in the moment, in the time. And of course, Facebook, that's what we all do in our spare time now, is scroll Facebook or Instagram. And I was scrolling through Facebook, and I saw a medium that I had actually gone to get readings from before in the past was doing like a manifestation kind of clinic, like a free 3-day manifestation class. And I thought, well, it's free. I'll take it. Who wouldn't like to manifest, more money? And, it was like after the, I mean, none of this sounds crass, but after the death in the family, I had free time. Like I needed something to do, not to think about that kind of stuff. So, I took that free class, and of course the free class led into another paid class. And it was like how to connect with your spirit guides and grow your intuition. And I know now, looking back, that it was all synchronicity, because that person ended up being a friend of yours, Brenda, and Rosalie and I were in the same class together, taking the same class, and didn't know it, and we're living 10 miles apart at the time and didn't know one another. So I feel like all that was kind of like divine intervention to get, all of us where we are now. But it was just kind of like scrolling through Facebook one day. I saw this thing, and I was like, oh, that'd be interesting. I should do that. And then again, taking the inspired action to do it.
Yeah. And that is what it's about, is like taking the action whenever you feel an inkling about something that is, calling to your spirit.
And you get those little nudges that just like the little inklings in the back of your mind. It's like, you should. It's like, okay, I should. Yeah, I'll do that.
So this is Brenda. And for me, I would see all kinds of stuff whenever I was a kid. And I was terrified because my parents said everything was from the devil, obviously. And so
when you say you would see it, you would like actually see it with the physical eye, like in actual physical form, or are you talking more like in your mind's eye?
No, I would see it in physical form. And I would see a lot of things.
So jealous. I am.
Oh, no. It was terrifying, especially as a kid.
I'm jealous now that I have the learning and the knowledge, and I know what it would be.
As a kid, though, it's absolutely terrifying.
It was terrifying.
Can I jump in for a moment?
Yeah.
Hey, this is Alexandra. So you've heard us talk a lot about intuition and like heard us say different clair in a name. I just want to run down the brief list real quick. As Chandra had mentioned, claircognizance is a clear knowing. Just you somehow know. You don't know how you know, but you know. Clairsentience is feeling something in your body. Is it something cold on your hand? Is it feeling the feeling of love overpoweringly? There's clairvoyance, which is to see. You can see, like Brenda just said she saw, in the physical or in your mind's eye. There's clairaudience, which is hearing, so clear hearing. So it can be a snippet of a song, somebody's spirit, a voice said, your spirit guide talking, just something, a buzz, a ringing.
Disembodied or kind of in your own internal reading voice. But you just know it's not your thought, it's an external.
And it's often can be something that just pings and goes, oh, hey, yes, what I'm saying is accurate. That ding is clarifying that. There's clairgoustiance, which is clear taste. So if you're talking to someone and suddenly you're tasting like roses or, rosemary, That would be taste, clear taste. Then I've heard it 2 different ways, clairalience or clairolfaction. So clear smelling. So being nowhere where you would smell fresh cut flowers and suddenly getting that whiff, or being
in my
the
kitchen.
shower. Yes.
And Brenda's
and
kitchen.
smelling coffee.
Which happened to us like 2 weeks ago, having the group.
So I just wanted to jump in there. So for anyone who didn't know, that's the rundown. And they're just different ways your intuition can talk to you, and it can be a combination. So whatever. So jumping back.
Yeah, most people do have a combination of.
Yeah.
They have one that's primary, and then
exactly
some of the others.
Yeah. So back to me.
Right.
So I kind of shut everything down at about the age of 12 because I had a really scary experience that terrified me. It was probably nothing particularly bad, but it just scared me at that age, and I had nobody to talk to about it. I think I've shared that on the show at some point. Mm-hmm. And then I started, when we moved to a house, my kids were pretty young, and we started having all these weird experiences, and they started being afraid. So that's when I decided I wanted to help them. So I would, try to figure out answers for them because I didn't want them to be scared in our home. But I was a little terrified. So I started with meditation and then Reiki class, and then went to Bob Benz, who is no longer with us. He's in spirit. But I went to a spirit circle one night with him, and he said, we're going to turn all the lights off. We're blacked out the windows. And I'm like, oh, hell no.
Brenda's like, respectfully, Ben, I'm out.
I got to get out of here because I never liked the dark. I was always terrified of the dark my entire life.
Let me off this ride.
Exactly. And so I sat in this circle with all these people. There was probably 25 people in the room. It was a big group. And the woman next to me, she was a loose cannon, y'all. And she was sitting there and she was like, oh, Lord, something dark just dropped in front of me. And I'm sitting there thinking, somebody turn on the freaking light, turn on the light. I'm going to die. Oh, Lord, help me. No. And so I'm sitting there and Bob is like, Brenda, are you okay? Like he would tune into all of us to see how we were doing in the circle. And I was like, I'm okay.
Brenda's voice cracked.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, okay. Really? No.
Yeah. But seriously, getting through, sitting that out and seeing that nothing could hurt me,
right?
That nothing was dangerous. I think this woman was just loose.
Well, and it's kind of like one of the things that we talk about in mindfulness is kind of like the brain's ability to quote unquote co-create. Mm-hmm. And there's actually a part of the brain that once you start thinking about something and you kind of target in on that, your brain is going to cause you to notice that thing in your surroundings. Right. Called the RAS, the reticular activating system. So it's like anything that you are putting your attention toward, your brain is going to be like, oh, that makes them happy, or that's something that they really want to pay attention to. So you're going to start seeing that in your environment, right? So if that particular person was focused in on, quote unquote, darker energies, then of course anything that's going to appear before them
is going to be dark.
Yeah. More simplistic, but if you're interested in buying a car and you want a red Kia Soul, suddenly you'll notice every red Kia Soul and every red car you come across to bring it more into the tangible
every day. Yeah. So that particular experience helped me overcome my fear of like spirit and seeing things.
So let's take a quick break. But when we come back, I want to have like a little discussion about spirit circles and what they are and how important they are to intuitive development. Because I really think that's, I know it's been a key for me in developing. So
for sure.
Hi, this is Chandra. Brenda and I would like to invite you as part of our podcast community to join us on either Facebook or Instagram Live each Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern U.S. time, where we give free oracle readings for fans of the show. Just follow us on our Ohm-g podcast Facebook or Instagram page. You can post or DM us your questions there each week with the hashtag woo-woo-wisdom, and then tune in at 11 a.m. each Friday on our page to watch your free reading. If you can't join us live, don't worry. You can always catch it on the replay. This is just our way of saying thank you for being part of our woo-woo family. Hope to see you this Friday.
This episode is brought to you by Visit Williamsburg. In Williamsburg, Virginia, there's never too much of a good thing. Whether you're a foodie, a golfer, a history buff, a shopaholic, an outdoor enthusiast, or a thrill seeker, you'll find what you came for here and more. So ask yourself, what is it you want? Discover Williamsburg and plan your trip at visitwilliamsburg.com.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
Well, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for bearing with us in that quick little break. But we were just talking about spirit circles, and if for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's exactly what Brenda described. It's kind of like just sitting in the dark, connecting with your spirit guides, and allowing them time to not necessarily give you any particular message, but just kind of like give you experiences, give you sensations or feelings, or allow you to see certain things, and giving you time to acknowledge them, so kind of your guides can attune themselves to you a little more, so that they learn your particular system so that they can communicate with you better. And I feel like that's one of the reasons that we kind of continue to talk about community, and community being so important to us, is because you definitely need a group of people that you're comfortable with and you trust.
Because you're going to be sitting in the dark.
Yeah.
Plus, it's also, if you're brand spanking new, which the first spirit circle I had ever done was with you guys, it's kind of cool, because I think in your head, or at least what was going through my head, was, okay, I'm not feeling this. This isn't here. That tingle in my foot that's going, that can't be it, right? That's not, no. But it was kind of cool to say, okay, well, I see this like misty shape, it's this white color, or I'm feeling like there's a turtle next to me, whatever it is. And then somebody to go, oh yeah, hey, I see that. Or
right, exactly.
I think Brenda was the one who said, hey, Alex, there's this giant sphinx next to you. Does that mean anything? And I'm like, oh yeah, a medium once told me I had a past life as an Egyptian high priestess, and I had died and I was brought back to life by a moth. It's like, okay, so it's kind of cool to see that happen.
No big deal or anything.
But I mean,
it was another lifetime, girl,
big validation, or even little validation. You're sitting there and you're questioning stuff, but you see like a blue light in the left-hand corner, and you think nothing of it. You're like, oh, that was my eyes playing tricks on me. But then somebody else goes, I just saw a blue light in the left corner, and you're like, oh wait, oh wow,
Yeah.
But it's validation of those experiences, so that you can start to trust your own intuition and develop those.
Yeah, spirit circles were something that were done by the Spiritualist Church.
Yeah.
So that's how I first learned about it. Was in that kind of context. It wasn't a church, but it was someone who had been a spiritualist and lived in Lilydale, New York, which is like the
Mecca.
The American birthplace of spiritualism. And they've gotten a really bad rap, but this person was very giving of their time and wanted to help people learn and grow. So I really appreciated that aspect of it. And, I'm not a religious person. I'll just say that. Churchy stuff is like, it's not my vibe. But that particular religion, I think portions of it, I probably...
You resonated with more of that.
I align more with that than probably any other religion. And doing the spirit circle is probably something that can help you develop your own intuition almost the most. Right. As long as you go into it not being afraid.
And kind of suspending the disbelief, just like allowing the stuff.
Because some crazy stuff come in. Mm-hmm. We're talking like animals, we're talking like people, we're talking like crazy stuff.
And even if you don't have a group to do it with, if you don't have a group, even doing it on your own and just like at least acknowledging whatever sensation or things that pop into your mind. It can be a good exercise to help you learn to trust your own.
Right.
It's also cool. I think I've done an energy session with Brenda recently. I'd had some hip stuff going on and some things with my eyes. And I was just like, hey, if you think about it, actually, I think you offered. You were like, hey, do you want to do this with us? And so Brenda, Chandra, Rosalie, and I think Camille, you all worked on me. And that was a really cool experience too, because it was kind of like a spirit circle, but not really, because they were getting information from my body, from what was going around. And then to be able to confirm for them, like, oh yes, I felt that. Or, oh, hey, I'm getting this. And somebody's like, oh, well, yeah, I heard like part of that too. And it's, this is what's happening. So that was a really cool way to also develop tangentially onto.
Yeah, I think that's when like having a group is really good, because you have feedback from every single person of what that person's feeling or seeing, and everybody has their own way of tuning into spirit. Like I might see, I might hear, I might feel. Chandra might know.
Right. Camille might hear. So, but if she's getting it through hearing something, like if you experience cold on your left-hand side and she hears the word cold, and then I just know that you're cold. And then Brenda sees like, icicle from your, hanging from, but we all just experience the same thing, and it validates for each one of us, but through a different, unique experience to each one of us.
And then Rosalie is a physical channeler, I would say.
Yeah,
and so she might
stuff out.
Yeah.
she's like, I'm pulling this black rope thing out of you. It just keep coming.
Yeah.
That was weird. Yeah, that was.
And
weird.
I was like, I feel it. Like, I feel it coming out. So that was really cool.
So I remember that. When did you start, like, kind of knowing that you get, like, movement or sensation in your body when you're connected?
So, Rosalie here. The physical stuff, I don't know. So my kids, my journey into this, all this
started with your kids.
Started with my children. They were telling me they were seeing a shadow man in our home. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with this? I believe them. I know it to be true. I don't doubt them. My husband was like, they just active imaginations. And I'm like, no.
And let me tell you, I used to live in the same neighborhood, and when my girls were small, and Shadow Man was active in that neighborhood.
It's the same shadow man. So I actually had run into a neighbor before they had moved out of our neighborhood. We had just gotten together we actually have a really good neighborhood. Everybody knows everybody, which is very rare. And we were over at their house, I think for a wine night or something. And we were just
imagine that.
A wine night. And, we were just casually talking about, we love our neighborhood, and the historic significance of our neighborhood. It used to be a farm. The Carroll family used to own it. I actually did research because my kids were saying they're seeing this man. He kind of looked like a Colonel Sanders type top hat.
I've never seen Colonel Sanders.
Well, that's the image that comes in my head. Okay. Is the tie, the old-fashioned tie, this figure, Abraham Lincoln looking maybe.
That's a little closer.
Okay. So, of course, a few glasses of wine in, and you start like, it may sound weird, but have you ever noticed anything weird in your house or in the neighborhood? And these guys, they had told me, the neighbors had told me, they're like, oh yeah, you mean the shadow man? And they're like, our dogs see him and all this. And so apparently this shadow man was,
he roamed the farm.
Neighborhood, the old farm.
Yep.
And we've actually, the kids, just digging around in the yard playing, we've found old horseshoes, old,
a glass Listerine bottle from like 1900.
Oh, that's
fully
cool.
Intact. Like it wasn't even shipped or anything.
That is so cool.
Old leather shoes. All kinds
Christmas
of
decorations, toys.
Wow.
I was really into dirt and rocks and digging into the earth.
That's really
my
cool.
Girl with the
Me
rocks.
and my 5 Capricorn placements.
Right.
So anyway, I think that's where my journey started. And I think around that time, I started, I met Brenda. At the time she was a massage therapist, and just we just started talking about stuff, and
I told her she had the witch vibe.
Yeah, she told me I had that witch vibe, and I'm like, well, girl, since you are into this, I got to tell you this. There's some weird shit going on in my neighborhood, and that's how.
And then I was like, "Oh, I used to live in that neighborhood.
I know all about that weird stuff."
So that's kind of like how all this started, and then Brenda introduced me to Bob and Ben's, and I got to go to my first spirit circle. Was terrifying because I was claustrophobic. And that's a whole nother story that I have overcome that. And my first spirit circle was terrifying and I think I went with Brenda and Camille, and I told Camille, Brenda was across the room. I was sitting next to Camille, and I told Camille, I said, if I am absolutely terrified, I said, don't freak out if you feel me grab your knee. Because I said, if I'm having a freak out and I grab your knee, I said, I'm having a panic attack. So I said,
it's not spirit.
It's not spirit, Camille. It's Rosalie having a panic attack.
And it's not me coming on to you.
Because I was, being claustrophobic, I was completely afraid of being in a completely blacked out room.
And the room that he had was completely blacked out. He had taken the windows and put plywood over them or something. Like it was
I didn't know that.
Black.
Camille was actually beside of me in my first spirit circle.
Okay.
The first circle I did with like a group of people, which Whitney was leading it at the time.
So Camille seems to be our lifeline here. And she's not here tonight, but she was our lifeline during our spirit circles. So anyway, I was completely terrified. I mean, my heart did start to race and stuff, but I would start seeing things and I'm like, what the heck is going on? I'd see twinkling lights on the ceiling and I'm like, but why am I seeing these little lights on the ceiling? And I was just like, okay.
And it's pitch black.
And if you could stick your hand in front of your face and not see it, it was that dark.
Which I think is an interesting point when you're in a blacked out room like that, and then you see like a dark shape or something that's a dark color or like black, then you're like, okay, this is a little like mindception going on here.
Exactly.
Because you're like, how am I saying this dark in this dark room? But you can differentiate. You will know that it's not you.
Yeah, you can see shapes
and points of light and different things. But I think that this is Chandra, and I think that's what we're trying to portray is that even though when you first go into it, it may be more or less like a fear of the unknown, right? Kind of thing, but kind of like as you get out of your comfort zone and like step into it and just trust the process, that the fear kind of gives way to a little bit more of wonder and interest. And then you kind of get to the point where it's like, oh, that was interesting. Let me open up a little bit more and allow more of that in. And that's when you kind of learn that it's not, it's not a negative, it's not a scary, it's just an energy form, just like you're an energy form. And I think if we've done those spirit circles along the way, we've kind of all developed kind of a little bit past the kind of quote unquote fear of the unknown.
And like Alexandra has said so many times, be curious.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So when these events happen to you or these things happen to you, be curious about what is happening and be open to it instead of being like, oh, this is scary as F and I'm going to shut down. But just be curious and be open.
Like, it's scary, but what if? Like, is there another?
Oh, there's so many other sides.
Else. Yeah.
So,
Lord, help.
This is Alexandra. You done?
Yeah, I'm done. So,
I didn't want to jump over you there. Going off what Brenda said about how I'm always talking about be curious, I really do have to thank my mom for that because I really get a lot of that.
Shout out, Mom.
Yeah. Hey, Mom. I really get a lot of that from her and from her Graham, because my mom was raised Roman Catholic, my dad Southern Baptist. Neither wanted me to be the other, so they settled on Lutheran.
That's Catholic light,
which yes.
Middle ground.
That's our background too.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So a few parts of the story. One kind of where my story began, and then kind of how my mom raised me in some ways. And I say my mom because there was a period of my life where my dad wasn't in the picture. And I don't mean that in a weird, like my parents were fighting. I mean, my dad was going through an MBA school, had a full-time job. So I was young. I would wake up later than he would. He would, go to school and I'd be in bed by the time he got home. So that's why I really kind of say my mom. So I remember sitting in Sunday school and feel like we were watching a video with a tree. And I don't remember. I remember asking one of the facilitators, one of the people, they're watching all the people run around, and I'm like sitting away from the class because I'm like, these guys are crazy. They're too loud. They're too much for me. And so I remember asking the question. I was like, okay, well, you're talking all about this God, the Father. And I was like, well, what about Mother Earth? Because to me, it just is that there's the balance of the male and the female. And she was like, well, there's no such thing. It's just, just God, the Father. And so I told my parents, I was like,
patriarchy. Exactly.
So I told my parents, I don't really want to go to Sunday school anymore. I'd rather sit in church with you guys. So I did. And after a few years, I think we stopped going. So, but my great-grand, my mom's gram, my mom had told a story where she had told her gram, I don't really like God. And her gram goes, well, why? She's like, he's so angry. He's so angry and I don't get it. And she's like, well, honey. And so she told her a story about Jesus and children asking questions. And she's like, God doesn't have to be scary. And your God doesn't have to be the same as every other Christian or Catholic's God. So my mom really came away with take what, in a sense, the words that we use today, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. But a way to make your own faith your own. You don't necessarily have to follow what's prescribed by somebody else.
Exactly.
So she taught me that. She taught me to be curious. She taught me to look into things. She taught me to, hey, this sparked my interest. Moving on to when I was older than that, but younger in grade school, I would feel everything. I did more than feel. I took people's emotions. Somebody came to me in pain. It was my friends. They were talking about stuff that was going on with their family or their parents or they themselves. And I didn't know it, but I was taking that. I was taking them from them because they would suddenly feel better. Well, then didn't know what to do it. I shoved it down until I would erupt. And it would be over the silliest thing, like my shoelace wouldn't tie or something, and I would just suddenly start bawling. And my mom didn't really know how to help me because she didn't have the experience. So she helped me shut it down. I came back to this world a little bit before high school through my godmother's daughter, and she kind of introduced me back into the world.
And by this world, we mean the woo-woo world. The woo. Not just like she came back to the
spiritual, like the physical world. I had taken a brief vacation
into the planet Venus or Mars or wherever.
So I, came back to it and it was slow going. I taught myself a lot, learned a lot, and there's a lot I didn't know and still don't know. So I'm always a student. And there's one thing my dad had told me, and it was because I had told him, I was like, no, I don't think I'm Christian. I haven't felt that way in a long time. Like, I think I'm, a pagan. He's like, well, anything is better than being a pagan. So I learned to. Yep.
Wow.
Well, he was raised Southern Baptist, and he didn't know. And so again, I felt, wow, this is something not to be shameful of, but not to tell people. They don't get it. They don't understand. I have to hide it, and that wasn't, anyone else. But so I did that. Went to college, and I was like, okay, this is what I am, and I felt kind of defensive about it. I'm like this and whatever. But over the past couple of years, since last year, I've kind of like integrated it more because I've come back to it. I want to say like a second time, and found more practice ways through meditation to connecting to spirit, to the spirit circles, to developing intuition, to just saying, hey, this doesn't seem like my own thought. In how do I know this? And wow, okay, this ringing in my ear, this song seems really meaningful. And it's not just a song that got stuck in my head kind of thing.
But that's pulling cards too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's a good way to bring back in the topic of kind of neutral observer or curiosity is like always hindsight's 20/20. But now as you look at that interaction that you had with your father and you said, I feel more pagan, and then he completely shut it down. To be in that instance, you can get angry or feel misunderstood. But, if you could, in that kind of instance, take it to the curiosity, like, okay, well, what do you think pagan means? Like, what does that word mean to you? Because it may, when I say that word, I may mean something completely different than.
And it did mean something different to me than it did. And he's super supportive of it now. And Brenda brought up a good point with pulling cards, because so when my godmother's daughter brought me back into it, it was with cards. And I've always been attracted, I guess, for lack of a better word, to tarot. And that's kind of where my love of card reading has come from.
It's your inner gypsy self.
Yeah.
I think there's part of you that has had some lifetime as a gypsy and reading cards.
I was actually
that just
told
came through.
when I went to New Orleans, which is a very fun place. A reader for me, she's like, "Yeah, you were an oracle in a past life, like in ancient Greece." So I've had some incarnations that sound fun.
Yeah,
I've been a white witch, but we'll get into that on another episode.
Yeah, we're gonna do an episode on past lives.
And this is Rosalie here. When Alexandra said something about her dad said pagan, and that kind of totally turned him off when she mentioned pagan. Jokingly, growing up, my dad used to call my sister and I brujas, which in Spanish, that's a witch. And whenever my sister and I would do something, my dad would jokingly say, "Oh, something about brujeria," which means witchery, or, you did something. But in the Spanish Southwest, where our family's from New Mexico, witches were, they were part of life. And a lot of times these women were healers. And then the Native American culture, in some connotation, in any culture, there's your good witches and your bad witches. Some people choose to go the dark way and the light way, but for the most part, they're all healers and stuff like that. So just the terminology can turn people off. Mm-hmm. And
even though a lot of like people who are doing energy work or even
right.
Massage, which to me is a type of physical energy work. There may be cultures around the world where those people would be considered witches.
Right.
We've done a whole.
Some people find those words, those labels, that descriptor to be very empowering. It depends on what side of the spectrum you are.
Yeah.
And also your own relationship to whatever word it is. It could have been, "Oh my gosh, no, that word's scary." That's absolutely not. And then as you grow, as you develop along your path, you could go, "Wow, I really embrace whatever word or term it is because it encompasses part of who I am."
Well, and that's what you just said, is like, take the parts about it that do resonate with you and leave the parts that don't.
So, Allie is here with us, y'all.
Tell us
it's a special occasion.
I know you got some good stories over there.
Stories
sitting over there on girl.
Yeah. She'll probably throw mom under the bus here.
Her stuff started whenever she was seeing the scary stuff at your house, right? Is that the beginning of it all?
No, it was before the whole Shadow Man thing. Like, I've always been terrified of the dark.
Same.
Anytime it's dark, I start seeing things that. And when I was a kid, it was definitely like really, really creepy. Like, there would be like all these different figures at the end of my bed. I would have like sleep paralysis, and like I would always like want to like yell for my mom and try to cry, but then like I like wasn't able to, like my voice like wouldn't come out at all, and I was just kind of stuck there.
Well, I have a story after you're done. I forgot that.
And it's funny because the first time I ever did a podcast type thing, I actually talked about my sleep paralysis, which happens every so often now. It's not a constant thing anymore like it was when I was a kid. And then, I don't know, like there's just always like weird things that I would see or hear, and I just wasn't really sure about it.
Is there a point where you felt like all of those experiences from like your youth just kind of like turned into more of like a curiosity of what is this going to mean for me, as
instead of a fear?
Right.
I mean, I've always been kind of like curious about the woo-woo world, I guess. I was like super into Harry Potter, of course.
Such a good series.
Yes.
And
love it.
Just because like I don't know, I guess like the, magic aspect of it, where like there were things that was happening like when I was a kid. I used to play this game when I would sit like in the backseat of the car when I was a lot younger, probably like elementary school. And I would focus all my energy to turn on and off the streetlights.
Yeah.
I don't know why I started doing it, but I just remember that I was like able to actually like, if I focused hard enough, they would turn on or off depending on if they were on or off or not. So
I totally remember also doing that as a kid. Like
Really?
I would blow at them. Like when I wanted them to change, like I would focus really hard and then I would like blow my breath toward it. And like 9 times out of 10, it would flip.
Yeah. And I always thought like, oh, wow, I can control energy and whatever. I don't know. And then also it seems like a lot of the time the weather would reflect my mood. And I don't really know how to explain that either. It just kind of happened, especially like if there was like, the weather, like today it said it wasn't supposed to rain and it got really dark and cloudy and I had a couple of raindrops hit my windshield when I was driving home. And yeah, I guess just along the way,
like a lot of the energy stuff.
Yeah. And I also, like Alexandra said, I would feel everyone's emotions. That's like a big thing for me. Like it's
a lot to process when you don't know how to do it or don't have somebody to guide you because you have your own stuff
and you don't know
and you have other people's stuff.
Right. And I still don't know how to process it. It's hard for me to be like in groups of people. And the only exception is when I go to like concerts or festivals and like it just feels like super like euphoric. Like it makes me so happy. It makes me feel like really, really good. I think just because everyone is pretty much, having a good time.
Everybody there's having a good time. And I also feel like not that I'm trying to read you or whatever, but I just heard in my mind, music is vibration. So I feel like the music and the things that are kind of like going on in that experience are kind of altering, like you're able, like, it's almost like it counteracts, you know what I mean? Like sometimes there's like a dampening field, like I feel like the music and the vibration of the,
it's probably like a high.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it definitely is.
Because you get the excitement of everybody's in the crowd and you get
joy,
the music, the energy of the music.
You can tune into that vibration of the music and it kind of drowns out all the other stuff.
I mean, like depending on, I don't know if like anyone else has heard of binaural beats or whatever, but it's, different frequencies, like, it gets really low and that helps like ground you and things like that. Right. And then as they get higher, it works its way up the chakra. So if they're at a higher frequency, it's, more about working with like your third eye and that kind of thing. So yeah, music, I think also kind of helped me in a way. It led me to meet some of my best friends that I've known since I was like in 6th grade because I met them on a music message board on the internet. And then like years later, I went to visit them when I was like 21. I traveled all the way to Europe with one of them. So I've definitely had, the way we connected was like through music, but we also kind of talked about all the weird experiences that we were all having because it was all very similar. And I think the biggest part about building your intuition is that you need to have people that you trust and connect with, that you can talk about these things with, because just validation is the biggest part of all of it. Like if you can validate what you're feeling with someone else, then I mean, you're not crazy.
Exactly.
And you build that trust with other people as well as with yourself and what you're experiencing.
And I think a willingness to, this is Alexandra, to lean into the discomfort, to lean into that unknown, knowing if you have people to support you, great. And if you don't have people, I hope you know that you can lean into that unknown and reach out to us for support, because I don't know about you guys, but I would love to hear some of the stories about our audiences and our fans. Foray.
Yeah.
That would
stories.
Be awesome.
We're here and, coming back to that community that we're always talking about, we all find our little communities and we're here to be part of your community. So if you don't have one, and we're here to listen.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of, the whole point of this podcast. We started because we all just kind of met each other in some weird way and then started drinking wine and talking about weird shit.
Once we actually started talking about all the synchronicities that brought us together, we knew that it was not by just happenstance. There was a purpose to it.
Oh, I love you guys.
I love you guys too.
And we love everybody who's not with us tonight. We miss Aaron and Camille.
But they're with us in spirit.
Yeah.
Catch their stories next time.
Yep.
Right. Well, we appreciate you listening and joining us on this podcast. We hope you found some of our stories interesting
and fun.
Because at the end, intuition it's fun, like developing this side of yourself, and
It's totally fun.
Embracing the unknown is kind of like
it's like the juice of life.
Yes.
Also,
It's like the sweetness, the
nectar,
the good stuff.
get playful with it and
Embrace it.
give yourself a break. If it doesn't come right away, that's totally normal.
Yeah.
You know, just reach out.
That's why they call it development. You have to exercise the muscle.
Maybe next time we can convince Brenda to lead us in exercise. To help you guys develop.
We didn't have time to get to that tonight.
But we will do
Next
that in
time.
a future episode for sure.
Yes.
All right. Signing off, guys. Enjoy.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. Please follow and subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review. It's so easy to do and such a huge help for us. We appreciate your interactions so much. Want to join us at our table? Make sure to check out our YouTube channel and join our Facebook community. If you've enjoyed this content and wish to support us, take a look at our Patreon page. All information and links will be in our podcast description. Catch you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM. Women's voices amplified.